Welcome to another episode of Football Insiders. Jason Andera, Midco Sports. Michael McCleary, Argus Leader Sports. And tell me, Michael, was this everything you thought it would be? The football season coming down to one game until the championships. What do you think?
I mean, since I was a little boy, I always imagined, the South Dakota high school football season just being incredible. And it lived up to its hype,
This is one of my favorite weeks of the year is watching these teams one step away from the Dome. And Dome Week is great. You get all the fans there, but this has a different level of anticipation. And we're going to crack into all 7 classes and all 14 games, starting with 11 AAA. Just a couple of takeaways from last week, first of all. Speaking of last week, though, we did make our picks last week, and we differed on, I believe, 6 picks, and we split the difference. So we are tied going into semifinal round. We will make our picks and see if we can crack that tie at the end of this week. But let's go back to last week. 2 upsets at Howard Wood Field. The road teams didn't have to go very far on the road. O'Gorman and Lincoln pull off the victories at Howard Wood Field. What are your takeaways from that?
Yeah, you put upsets in quotes because, these weren't necessarily surprising victories. These are 2 teams that I think, even last week when we were making our picks, they were toss-ups. Even
though Roosevelt was, everybody talked about them as being the hottest team, O'Gorman also had 4 wins in a row.
Yeah, and, everybody was not, willing to give O'Gorman credit just because it was against a little bit of an easier schedule. But, O'Gorman's offense is legit, and they're getting better, which is, that sort of propels them into maybe a team that you would pick against in the first round to maybe a team that you would get behind in the second round, even if going up against a, better opponent. And we do differ on that, but, it makes things interesting now that you kind of see the surges happening a little bit.
Well, I agree. And then we had Brandon Valley and Harrisburg with a little less stressful wins on their point of view. Let's go into this week's games and preview them. We've got Lincoln at Harrisburg. They played a while back, and it was Harrisburg taking that win. But it took a little longer than they thought coming out of that President's Bowl game. And that was one of the first big challenges of the year for Harrisburg. And then they were challenged subsequent weeks after that. Can Lincoln do the same thing and compete into the fourth quarter against Harrisburg?
Yeah, and you'll remember that was the week after Lincoln's win
against
over Watertown,
yep.
Where they won sort of at the last second. And, Coach Jared Friedenberg was saying, right before that game at President's Bowl Media Day, he was sort of joking around that, they just needed to hang around to the end and then throw a Hail Mary at the end and maybe they'll win. But honestly, that was sort of the formula they followed. They just kept with Harrisburg. And, Harrisburg, I think, has gotten a lot better since that Week 3 game. But at the same time, Lincoln, made some big impressions last week. And, their offense seems to be coming along with Tate Schaefer at quarterback. Obviously, Jack Smith being his top target there. And then, Angel Jorshegi at running back. They got a lot of firepower there, and their defense has been great all year with Gabe Gutierrez in the middle. And, I think they could make some noise. But Harrisburg is one of those teams that, in this class at least, they started off the year powerful, and they're just getting even better and better.
The Lincoln Patriots had 9 turnovers in their 2 weeks prior to last week. Last week, they got it done. One late fumble that was inconsequential, and Tate Schaefer, who had thrown 15 interceptions on the year, and we always say this, not all his fault, went interception-free. In fact, that was the first interception-free game that Lincoln had all season long, and they got the win because of that. I think they're coming in with some real cohesion, but this Harrisburg team, I think they've pulled into another gear right now, and with them playing at home, they worked all season long to get a home playoff game. They've been really solid. Gavin Ross came back with another 200-yard rushing game last week. I lose count how many 200-yard rushing games he's had this year, but he averages 160 yards per game this year. That is a formula for playoff wins, is if you have a guy that you can run the ball with. Jacob Knuth doesn't turn the ball over, and the defense is really starting to hone in.
Yeah, we talk about this every single week. The key to victory probably for Lincoln here is to get as many takeaways as they possibly can.
Right.
And, Harrisburg does have some vulnerabilities there. They, lose the ball at the line of scrimmage every once in a while. Jacob Knuth isn't, he's not perfect. He throws interceptions. And, Lincoln certainly has the playmakers to make those plays. But when you have somebody like Gavin Ross who just can absolutely control a game, probably more than anybody. You just don't see stat lines that he puts up against AAA defenses. And, when he's running the football and then you have that long pass from Knuth, which, I don't know if he's thrown an inaccurate deep ball all season long. It's really, really tough to beat. And, Lincoln, as good as they've been playing on offense recently, and obviously as good as they played last week, that's probably not enough. But, it's still going to be an interesting game. And I think that Lincoln, if they do get those takeaways, maybe that is the way that, they get Harrisburg sweating a little bit, and who knows.
What's the pick, Michael McCleary?
I'm still going with Harrisburg. It's the Tigers are really powerful, and I expect them to be in the Dakota Dome next week.
Yeah, last time they played, it was a 1-touchdown game. I think this will be similar. I think it'll come down to a touchdown in the last quarter, and maybe Harrisburg piles one more touchdown on for a 2-score win. But I think Harrisburg gets it done and punches their second straight ticket to the Dakota Dome. The other game, the 2 versus. Well, it's not the 3, it's the 6? 2 versus 6 seeds. O'Gorman comes into Brandon Valley. They played once this year as well, back on O'Gorman's field. And Brandon, they snuck out a 3-point win in that game. That was back in September 17th. And now, over a month later, I think both teams have really changed. But the biggest change I've seen is O'Gorman and their offense. Like you said, Bennett Dannenbring has been smooth and one of the best quarterbacks in an O'Gorman uniform over this last 4 or 5 game period.
Yeah, he's playing so well, and he's got so much athleticism outside of the pocket. He can make things happen, even in the running game too. But he just looks so much more comfortable at the quarterback spot. He's a type of kid who, he's got a talented arm, and he's been taking those shots all year long. But he never really had that in-between game in the beginning of the year. And, as Ryland Satter has come along a little bit, he's got that guy that he could dump it off to and just take it to the house. He's got a ton of weapons on this offense. Obviously, one of them being the emergence of Peyton Hagee at that number 1 spot. Now Manny Struck is back too, and they got 2 guys who could run those deep routes. And, Bennett Dannenbring has no shortage of options on that offense.
I'll tell you what, this O'Gorman team is moving the ball. Bennett Dannenbring, just over the last 5 games, almost 1,500 yards. He's almost averaging 300 yards per and 4 touchdown average per game over the last 5 weeks. He's really been killing it. And then defensively, we forget that this O'Gorman team has given up 16 points a game, the second best statistical defense in the class this year. That's a good formula to go on the road and try to make something happen. Brandon Valley, on the other hand, they've been surviving the last 4 weeks with the sophomore quarterback. Jack Dewey has done a nice job, but they expect to get Lucas Slack back this week. I don't know if there's a huge difference between the quarterbacks, but just to have a guy who's a junior, who's been through some playoff wins before in the past last year with Brandon Valley, I think that gives them a little bit different look offensively this week.
Yeah, and I still think they're going to lean heavily on the running game too.
Yes,
but it's always interesting when you got another guy coming to make plays, and they got some good people in the receiving game. Obviously, Peyton Carroll is a big target for them who can make some big catches. But it's still going to be the same formula with Brandon Valley. They're going to try to keep possession, they're going to try to run the ball, and they're going to try to have Jordan Johnson break a big one. So, it's going to be interesting. And, with O'Gorman trying to move really quickly with their offense and trying to, establish the same explosion that they did last week against Roosevelt, and Brandon Valley trying to slow them down, it's going to be sort of a battle of, slow versus fast, I guess.
So what's the pick, Michael?
I'm picking O'Gorman. I talked to Bennett Dannenbring the other day, and he talked about Manny Struck coming back, and he said, as weird as this sounds, Manny Struck going out actually helped him a little bit. Where he was sort of counting on Manny to beat people deep early in the season, and now he's more complete. He could hit people short. He knows when to check down, and then he doesn't have to take those shots all the time, but he's willing to take those shots when they do beat them. But he could wait for those things, and with the way that the offense is playing right now, I can't doubt him. So I'm picking O'Gorman to win another big one. O'
O'Gorman did this a couple years ago where they came off of I guess an average, you call it an average season, and really put the pedal to the metal in the playoffs. I think they look a lot like that team. But this Brandon Valley team, because they don't have the big name stars, we kind of just forget about them. And they know how to play playoff football, and they do it with a huge offensive line. I think they totally control the ball in this game. They welcome back Lucas Slack with some really good sustained drives. I think they're able to hit their receivers a little bit more effectively in the mid-range and maybe even for some big plays. And I think Brandon Valley, with that home field advantage, gets it done in a super close one. And I'll be on the call for this one, so no rooting interest here for me. I just feel like Brandon Valley has the experience to get it done. All right, we'll move on to 11AA, and we've got Yankton and T facing each other for the first time ever. They have never played each other. T, of course, usually in a different class than Yankton, and they didn't play in the regular season this year. Let's start with this Yankton team. They have a quarterback who's very dynamic. Rugby Riken has had an incredible year for Yankton, and they've got a lot of different receivers they can spread the ball to. Running the football has been such a big part of what the Bucks do over the years. Not as much this year. They still can run, but they got to go up against a really good defense in T.
Yeah, I mean, T is they're the upper echelon of the class, and right now with Brookings out of the field and Pierre having taken that late season loss to Brookings, I mean, T sort of separated themselves from the pack a little bit. And, Yankton is one of those teams that, in this class that was extremely close at the middle, they sort of were that team that sort of separated themselves a little bit. But, I mean, going up against T, that's never a good matchup for anybody. So, I mean, the T can do it on offense, they could do it on defense. And, I mean, even though they have a tendency to start a little bit slow, I mean, going all the way back to the Watertown game, Watertown scored 14 points within like the first 5 minutes of the game, and they didn't score another point after that.
Right. Aberdeen, same thing. They got a little lead early, and they weren't able to extend on that. Yankton is going to have to hope to do the same thing. I think they have to hope to get out to a quick start and keep the passing game moving smoothly, because this T area defense is – they're ball hawks, man. They will take that ball away if you make a mistake. So looking forward to seeing that. What's the pick on this one, Michael?
It's T. Even if they do suffer one of those slow starts again and Yankton gets out fast, I still think T is good enough to recover from that. I think this is a win that, we've been anticipating this Pierre T matchup for weeks now, and I feel like that's going to be the first step towards getting that, and the T's going to be in the Dakota Dome next week.
Yeah, I agree. This T area team has done so much. I mean, they are on a 21-game winning streak currently. They have only lost one playoff game in the last 4 years. They know how to get it done, and I'll tell you what, this coaching staff will be ready for Yankton, and Yankton, I think, will put up a good battle, but they're just outmatched in this one. Aberdeen Central, with the big win last week over Brookings, they actually put some points up on Brookings, something that Pierre didn't do, and now they play each other this week. I think Central is going in the right direction. Might be too big of a wall to bust through, though, with this Pierre team on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd because they were going in the wrong direction until that playoff game.
Yeah.
So that was probably as big a surprise as any result across South Dakota. I mean, Brookings was, probably the hottest team in this class. Obviously after that season-ending win over Pierre, I mean, Pierre was supposed to be the team that's vying with T area for that top spot, and then they lost.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was really surprising, especially, with Aberdeen Central, the trajectory they've taken over the last couple weeks of the season.
I will say about Aberdeen Central, though, in the second half, they played Roosevelt, T, Pierre. Like, they played some really good teams down the stretch, and even though they were losing those games, I could see a little progression on that team, but still a shock, though,
yeah,
for them to go into Brookings and win.
Yeah, and I've been a fan since the beginning of the year of quarterback Sam Rolfs. I mean, I just think he could do things that most people at the quarterback spot cannot do. Like,
maybe one other guy can do it, and that's Lincoln Keenholtz, though, on the other side.
That is correct. I mean, if there's anything to be excited about this matchup, it's two really, really good quarterbacks going up against each other. So, the great thing about this game is no matter who wins this game, there's going to be a great quarterback in the Dome next week.
Yes, exactly. And the pick?
It's Pierre.
Yeah, I got Pierre as well. They're a team that has been putting up huge chunk plays. Had some trouble 2 weeks ago against Brookings, but really they had a good showing last week against Watertown and showed that the second time they play a team, they can change things up and make it work. Against Aberdeen the first time, they threw for 7 touchdowns. I don't know if they'll be able to throw for 7 on Aberdeen, but I do think that they will control this game, and I've got Pierre as well. All right, we'll move on to 11A, where undefeated Madison takes on Del Rapids. This Del Rapids team, since losing to Madison back on October 8th, about a month ago, back when Madison won that one 35-7, but since then Del Rapids has been putting up 36 points per game, and they've been yielding less than 10 points per game. Del Rapids, are they a different enough team to challenge Madison in this one?
They might be a different enough team to challenge probably any other team, but Madison might just be too good at this point. Madison is really, there's no reason to doubt them at this point. They've beat everybody that they're supposed to, and they've beat them pretty handily as well. So, the Bulldogs are, they're the top team in this class, and I don't expect that to change.
Yeah, this Bulldogs team has been outstanding this year. Again, offensively with Nate Rickey getting things done, and then defensively with Trey Smith leading that group in almost every category defensively. They have been really tough to beat. This kind of harkens back to some of those championship teams they had a few years ago. A different style of team, but they have that same dominance. I'm picking Madison in this one. How about you?
I'm picking Madison as well.
All right, now maybe the more intriguing game in 11A, we've got Millbank taking on Vermilion, and I look back in my records. It has been a long time since these two teams have played, and it's really interesting. You got two kind of old school coaches with Brian Almendinger in Millbank going against Tom O'Boyle of Vermilion, but both teams, I think, have done enough different and done enough good coaching to get themselves to a semifinal game. Both of them, at the beginning of the year, if you'd have told me that they would have made it this far, I would have been a little surprised.
Yeah, and Millbank obviously pulled off that huge upset over Canton last week, where
But you almost picked.
I did almost
picked it.
Because Millbank, I think the reason why I went there is because Millbank played Madison really, really close earlier in the year, and that. To me, that was sort of the litmus test a little bit. It was just like, it just showed me that the Millbank defense, as it's been playing, limiting people to really, really low outputs.
The takeaways killed Canton in the end of that game, where Millbank their defense just showed up big.
Yeah, I believe they fumbled the ball 3 times in that last quarter, or maybe it was 2 and then 3 overall. But it was Millbank deserves credit for that, but Canton did. On several occasions, they had some of their playmakers just hold the ball a little bit wide, and Millbank knew that and they exploited it. So credit to them looking at the film and keeping track of that. But this Millbank defense, even if it wasn't come with takeaways from the very, very beginning of the game, they limited the run game. They did not let anything happen at the line of scrimmage. There was probably one big play all game by Peyton Eben, and that was, I believe it was nullified by a missed field goal where they sort of just ran twice and they just ran out of time.
Exactly, it was a big play, and Bennett Schwen came from the backside and ran Peyton Eben down to save the touchdown, and then they missed the field goal going right into halftime, and that was the only real scoring opportunity of the game for Canton.
Yeah, and it was sort of a strange, sequence of events where the decision making was a little questionable. Where the 2 runs when you knew the time was running out. I mean, you can't expect a high school kicker to come in, while
the clock's ticking.
Sprint onto the field and then get set and then kick a field goal. I mean, that just put the kicker in a really, really tough position. And obviously, it ended up, they needed more than a field goal to win that game. But still, I mean, it just was. It was a little odd towards the end of the half. It almost seemed like they weren't looking for those points, but then, when it got to 4th down, they just sort of had to try to take them.
Yeah, and Millbank did just enough to get the victory in that one, playing against a really good Canton defense. This week they play Vermilion. Vermilion is an interesting team. They are the tone is set, we should say, by their quarterback, Jack Kratz, who is got a really good arm, but he also has some really good running ability. He's run for 17 touchdowns this year, and he's thrown for 930 yards to his two receivers, Zone Robinson and Mekhi Sheffield, who are absolute game breakers. Like once or twice a game, one of those guys is going to come up with a huge play. That's the big question for me. Can Vermilion make a couple big plays? Because in games that they have been able to do that, they usually get the victory. Minus the one game that they played against Madison where they had a couple big plays and still were not able to get that victory. So the pick here, Milbank at Vermilion. What do you think, Michael?
I'm picking Milbank again. The Bulldogs defense, it's legit. They're really, really good. And I think that, this is just another game where they sort of, put their foot down a little bit and just prevent Vermilion from getting on the board too much. And, I think they have enough on offense just to get that little bit of an edge. And I think the defense gets it done.
Interesting. The winner of this game gets to stay at the Dome for another week. It's not often that we've had a semifinal game in Vermilion. And, in fact, Vermilion hasn't made it to a championship game since 1999. And, of course, they had a really good run in the 90s. And they are rocking once again. And I think Vermilion, with that home field advantage, with a couple big plays in the passing game, they're going to get it done against this Milbank team who really has a couple guys coming back from injury that have really made them strong. But I think Vermilion has enough to get it done. Moving on to 11B, Elk Point Jefferson is at Winner. This is going to be an interesting game. I think Elk Point Jefferson really is kind of gone under the radar a little bit. They're the second highest scoring team in this class, right behind Winner. So we've got two high scoring teams going at it in this one. Yeah,
and Winner hasn't really, Winner has the defense to match up with its high scoring as well.
They
do. Winner's games generally end 44-0.
Yeah.
That's how Winner's scoring, and
their average is 52-8, so pretty close.
Okay, well,
we'll give you that, Michael. That's all right.
Yeah.
You're right, though. They've had a lot of zero games.
I did not give them enough credit, I guess. Winner has played a lot of blowouts this year, and Elk Point Jefferson, they could be a high-scoring team. I don't know if they're high-scoring in the same way as Winner is.
This team has 4 running backs, as they usually do, with all 400 yards. I'm talking about Winner now. And they can feed any direction, any part of the field, any situation, they've got to play for it. Elk Point Jefferson, though, not far back. Ben Swatek and Lucas Heiser have been really good running the football, and they're pretty much evenly split here. Both of them near 800 yards rushing on the year. I like the way this Elk Point Jefferson team has played recently, and Noah McDermott at quarterback kind of leading the way. But defensively, trying to stop this Winner defense and then coming back on the field, that can wear you down by the fourth quarter. I don't know if Elk Point Jefferson has been tested quite like they will. I would not be surprised at all to see a close game at halftime. I would be surprised to see it close at the end of the fourth quarter. I'm taking Winner. What about you?
I'm taking Winner as well.
All right. There's some bulletin board material for you, Huskies. The other game in 11B, Beersford takes on Bridgewater Emory Ethan. And Beersford got the win in the regular season, and it was not really a close game. 23-7 they won. It was a little bit muddy that day. Nobody passed the ball, but Beersford was the better team. What do you see in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Beersford has been on a run, and it's been a really surprising run. Obviously before this playoff started, they hadn't won a playoff game in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Now they've won 2. And honestly, I think this is one of those games that, they proved that they could go up against Bridgewater Emory Ethan. I mean, they beat them pretty handily early in the season. 23-7 was the final score. I mean, that's a multi-touchdown win. Like, that's not, I don't remember quite, how the game progressed. Maybe it's one of those games where the score is a little deceiving. But
yeah, it was a little messy field, and Beersford, they didn't have to throw much. They were able to run. And Beersford's a team that likes to throw, so they showed they can do a little bit of both.
Yeah, and speaking of teams that lost to Winner 44-0,
exactly.
Bridgewater Emory Ethan, I mean, they've were able to recover from that winter loss, and they've put together a really nice season. But Beresford, I mean, they've proven that they're a lot better than the 14th seed that they were given, and I think that this is a team that is just sort of playing off the momentum, and they won some close games, and I expect this to be a close game too. But Beresford has proven that they could win those. So.
And the pick for you?
Beresford.
I'm making a last-minute audible. I'm going to switch to Bridgewater, Emory, Ethan here. Hopefully you haven't published my picks yet, because I had Beresford the whole way, and I switched to Beresford, Bridgewater, Emory, Ethan.
I have not published the picks, but now I have to go in and change it. Oh, God.
I just think that they have too much pedigree, and Kobe Kaiser, let me tell you, the games that he runs the ball well, they just win, and he's been running the ball well over the last couple of weeks. He didn't in the middle of the season when they had those couple of losses, so I'm going with Kobe Kaiser and the Seahawks in this one.
Just for the record, in our notes document, it still says Beresford. So there's something about what I said that might have made him change the pick. So take what I said with a grain of salt, because
take everything we say with a grain of salt, because these picks are excruciating to make for me, because we get the pitch from both coaches, and I don't know about you, but when I listen to coaches, I buy in. I'm like, yeah, you're going to win. Of course you are. And then I talk to the other coach. I'm like, yeah, of course you're going to win. So I flip-flop a lot, but after much study and determination, I'm going to flip to the Seahawks. So there you go. 9AA, another game. Platte Geddes, the defending champs, taking on Timber Lake. Platte Geddes came in as the 9 seed in this, so they're going to be on the road at Timber Lake. So Timber Lake, the seed favorite, but I think most people expect Platte Geddes to get this done.
Yeah, I mean, Platte Geddes, obviously they're defending 9AA champs. I think they've proven in this run that they're a team that is just built for playoff time, and they've been getting it done in the past couple of weeks, and I expect them to continue this week.
They've had a different starting lineup every week until last week. They finally had the same starting lineup 2 weeks in a row. And they played really well. And I think Grayson Hansen is the X factor here. Hank Kraft is a phenomenal player for Timber Lake, but I think size-wise, you got to give the edge to Platte Geddes, and they've been getting a lot from Joey Foxley, who didn't start the year out as their starter, and now is the leading receiver on the team. So I really like what they're putting together. I'm taking Platte Geddes as well. Canastota Freeman at Parkston, another very difficult pick for me. What did you decide on this one?
I ended up going with Parkston. It was a toss-up, but I just had this gut feeling,
Yeah, this Parkston team, they just look different on the field. They have run over their competition, and Cole Prunty has been the reason that they've been able to do that. They have him and Braden Jervik, 2 guys who can really run the ball. Canastota Freeman has to rely a little bit more on the pass, and I think when you get deeper into the year and they rely a little bit more on the pass, sometimes turnovers, sometimes the weather will get you, and I think Parkson will find a way to get this thing done. Moving to 9A, we've got 4 teams left. All of them are undefeated. We do not have this happen very often, and 9A is stocked this year, and we've got a great matchup between DeSmet and Harriet Selby area. What do you think about this one, Michael?
Yeah, DeSmet might be the best 4 seed that we'll see, throughout this playoffs. They were #1 in the media poll pretty much all year long, behind, the play of Colt Wilkinson, Kalen Gary, Red Ostis. They have some really, really powerful playmakers on that offensive side, and I expect that, even though they're going up against the #1 seed, I think we're about to kind of see a realignment here where, some of those teams that, have been exploding since the start of the year start to show that, all right, that maybe they didn't get that top seed just by circumstance.
DeSmet looks athletically like a very good team, but let's remember, they haven't really had a really tough game. I mean, they've played some good teams. Del Rapids St. Mary, they had a good game last week, but they haven't played a really tough team since their opener when Wellesley Wessington faced them and gave them a decent game. And this Harriet Selby area team is super physical, and they've got a nasty defense, and they call their defense the Nasty Nine. 39 created turnovers this year. If they can turn over DeSmet, they have a shot in this one. If DeSmet can find the short passing game and find some holes like Castlewood did against Harriet Selby last week, I think DeSmet has the edge in this one. I mean, I've been a longtime supporter of Harriet Selby area, and it pains me to say that DeSmet has a good shot in this one. I'm going to pick DeSmet.
Yeah, I'm picking DeSmet too. This is a really, really close game. And like you said, like DeSmet hasn't had a test like this probably all year. But, you know, I don't know. The Bulldogs they're powerful. And I think the offense, especially in 9-man football, the offense, you know, sort of is the cure-all here.
I think you have some really key players like Caden Fast, who doesn't normally get featured in DeSmet's offense. I think they're going to try to take Kalen Gary out of the game, and I think you're going to see some of these other guys, Red Ostis and Caden Fast, make some big plays for DeSmet. I think it's going to be really close. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way. Wall takes on Howard in the other battle, and Wall quietly is in the semifinals for the third time here now in the last 5 years. They have had tremendous success in Wall, but everybody points to their schedule. They don't play quite the same schedule that a team like Howard does.
Yeah, and, you know, Howard a couple weeks ago, you know, had sort of just a game-breaking win over, you know, the #1 team in 9AA in Hanson. They shut him out. It was, I think, 26-0 was the final. I mean,
right.
You know, Howard, you know, has separated themselves probably even more than DeSmet in the sense that they just played a difficult schedule, and they did basically the exact same thing to that schedule that DeSmet did. So there's a reason they're the #2 seed here. And, you know, going up against a team like Wall, which obviously, you know, they blanked their schedule as well. They, you know, they won it out. But, you know, one of these teams has to leave not undefeated, and I think Wall might be that team.
I'll tell you what, this Wall team is not going to be a pushover. Their quarterback, Burke Blasius, is really good. If you haven't had a chance to watch him, try to find a stream, watch it. He's fun to watch. And I think they might try to move the ball through the air a little bit, which teams haven't done very much off of Howard this year. And Garrettson had the most success doing it, and they had the closest game of anybody against Howard this season. So I think Wall is going to go with that strategy. I would not be shocked to see a close game here in the second half as well. I just think this Howard team, despite only having 3 seniors that really play on this team, they are loaded with physical players, and the leadership of a guy like Jay Syfor getting it done. I would give me Howard, but don't be shocked to see Wall give him a close game. And in 9B, we get down to the smallest class, some of the most interesting matchups. Del Rapids St. Mary takes on Avon. They played back on the second week of the season. Avon won that game 48-14. I think both teams feel like they're a little different from week 2.
Yeah, and you know, Avon has kept up their scoring punch even when they go up against teams that you think might match them up. And you know, they've let up quite a bit of points this year, but their offense always gets that extra edge. So, you know, I mean, looking at Avon, I picked Alcester Hudson against them last week, and you know, I'm giving them the credit where they deserve right now. They, you know, did a pretty good job against Alcester Hudson. They kept up their offensive punch, and I expect them to continue that this week.
I think Del Rapids St. Mary has really turned it around. They avenged their week 1 loss against Gayville-Vollen with a playoff win last week. I think they're going to avenge the week 2 loss now against Avon because they really switched. They started out the year as a spread team. They went back to the bread and butter and found out what works, and they are executing that with Nick Gaspar and Ty Brown and a lot of guys who can run the football. And John Pica does a great job making holes, the all-state lineman up front. So I think this Del Rapids St. Mary team has found a different gear. I think they're going to hand Avon their first loss of the year. Could be wrong. And our final game to preview, Potter County takes on Faulkton area. These two played back on the very first week of the season, and Faulkton won that game 36-18. Can they do it again?
Yeah, I expect a repeat of that matchup. You know, maybe not the same exact score. I think this game's probably going to be closer than it was in the beginning of the year, but I expect Faulkton to pull it out.
Yeah, I think these are two very high-scoring teams. You got a good quarterback with Faulkton, and Parker Geddes has done a great job. You also got a great quarterback with Potter County, and I think that's where they separate themselves. Grant Lukens he's looked to me like maybe the or one of the best players in all of 9B. He's a dual threat quarterback who can get it done. He's also one of their best players on defense. I think the difference maker is the Grant Lukens. He'll find a way to get the Battlers back to the top. Well, that's a look at all the games. Let us know what you agree and disagree with. But, Michael, what's the Argus Leaders coverage look like this week?
Yes, so we're going to be out at both of the AAA games this week, where I'm going to be at O'Gorman at Brandon Valley, and then Matt Zimmer, college sports reporter at the Argus Leader, is going to be at Lincoln at Harrisburg.
Okay.
And then elsewhere in the state, we're going to be out at
Did you say Bridgewater, Emory?
Yeah, Bridgewater Emory's matchup with Beresford. Obviously, Beresford turning into a really, really good story. And, we definitely wanted to follow them along. And then we're going to be out at T Area's matchup with Yankton. Like we said earlier, T Area is probably the gold standard of 11AA at this point. And, it's nice to get a look at them going up against a tough opponent right before the Dakota Dome.
Yeah, you don't know which of these games is going to produce the best show, but there's going to be great storylines in all of them. We will have all those storylines for you on Varsity Sports Live following Friday night's coverage at 10:30 live right here on Midco Sports. In our live game this week will be O'Gorman at Brandon Valley. So if you get Midco or Midco Sports Plus, make sure to tune in to that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, for Michael McCleary of the Argus, I'm Jason Andera. We will see you one more time next week on Football Insiders next Wednesday.